Welcome to the Affair Diaries, the channel for stories of life's second act. After my husband had an affair, his mistress's husband came to me. He said, "I have a vast fortune. All you have to do is nod, and we'll file for a marriage license tomorrow." I thought for only a few seconds before I agreed. I sat huddled in a secluded corner of a garden cafe in Manhattan's West Village, a spot I had chosen myself. Tucked behind dense ferns, it allowed me a clear view of the entire space, while making it nearly impossible for anyone to notice me. On the table, my iced latte had long since melted, the ice gone, leaving a bland, separated mixture. About 30 feet away, at table number 6 by the koi pond, sat my husband, Mark. He wasn't alone. The woman across from him, in a bold, crimson silk dress, with a daring slit that showcased her long legs, was Chloe. I knew who she was. Who in the world of finance and logistics didn't know Chloe? She was the wife of Alexander Croft, the chairman of Croft Maritime, a true shark in the shipping industry. Mark was smiling. It was the same smile I had once loved so desperately, the smile that had convinced me, a rigid and principled chief accountant, to step back from my career. I had poured my entire 10 years of savings into his dream, co-founding his construction company. Mark's hand, the one still wearing the platinum wedding band I'd chosen, was now caressing the back of Chloe's hand, openly and brazenly. I didn't cry. My eyes were dry. At 32, after a decade wrestling with numbers, with dry balance sheets and stressful tax audits, I had forged a cool head. I only felt a crushing weight in my chest, like a 1,000-pound stone pressing down, cutting off my breath. A month ago, Mark had come home looking utterly defeated. He told me the company was in serious legal trouble, facing the risk of having all its assets seized by creditors. He persuaded me to sign what he called a sham divorce petition. "Emily, it's just a formality," he had pleaded, his voice so sincere, so full of anguish that I never suspected a thing. "I need to put my name on this new development property alone to secure the capital to save us. If we're co-owners and the company goes bankrupt, the bank will seize our home, everything. Please, just sign. As soon as this is over, I'll add you right back to the deed." I signed it because I trusted my husband, because I wanted to protect the home we might one day fill with children, though we had none yet. And now, the truth was unfolding right before my eyes. There was no development property to save us. There was only a treacherous man, plotting to build a new life on the ashes of his devoted wife's sacrifice. "Have you seen enough?" A deep, gravelly voice from just above my head made me jump. I looked up. A tall, imposing man in a bespoke charcoal gray suit was standing there. His face was chiseled, his eyes deep-set, and as cold as a frozen lake in winter. It was Alexander Croft, chairman of Croft Maritime, the husband of the woman currently entwined with my husband. Without waiting for an invitation, he pulled out a chair and sat opposite me. His demeanor was commanding, radiating the authority of a man accustomed to giving orders. He placed a thick manila folder on the table. The sound of paper hitting wood was sharp and final. "Your husband is spending my money," Alexander said, his tone as flat as if he were discussing a monthly financial report, "and he's already paved the way to kick you to the curb." I looked from the folder to his face. "What do you want?" Alexander didn't answer immediately. He pushed the folder toward me. "Open it. Page 5. With trembling fingers, I flipped through the pages. Page 5 was a notarized copy of a final divorce decree. The date of signing was 1 week ago. The crimson seal of the New York County Supreme Court felt like a mocking smear of lipstick on my life. How is this possible? My voice was a broken whisper. "He said he wouldn't file it. He said we'd wait until the trouble passed." "He filed it the day after you signed," Alexander cut in, his voice cold and brutal. "But it was the truth I needed to hear. And because you signed an agreement waiving your claim to all marital assets to help him dodge creditors, you are now, legally speaking, left with nothing. The house you live in, the car you drive, even the savings you withdrew from the joint account to give him for his investment, it all legally belongs to him." I dropped the folder. The feeling of betrayal, of being utterly played, rose in my throat like bile. I hadn't just lost a husband. I had lost my dignity, my faith in basic decency. I, Emily Carter, a certified public accountant sought after by countless corporations, had been swindled in the most painful way by the man I shared my bed with. It was the single greatest miscalculation of my life, and the cost was my entire youth and fortune. Alexander watched my expression, his eyes narrowing in assessment. "Heartbreak doesn't solve problems. You're a finance professional. You understand profit and loss better than anyone. This investment of yours is a total loss. A write-off. Now it's time to talk about restructuring. I looked up at him, forcing myself to regain my composure. I smoothed my hair, adjusted the collar of my blouse. You didn't seek me out just to inform me that I'm a failure, did you, Mr. Croft? A slight smirk touched his lips, seemingly pleased with my quick recovery. Very sharp. Legally, you are now a single woman. I have also finalized my divorce from Chloe, but she's more cunning than you. She still holds significant financial power in my company because our asset division isn't complete. She has people in my accounting department, siphoning corporate funds to support your ex-husband. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. I have assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but I need someone I can trust, someone with the professional expertise to audit my entire system and stop the dirty money Chloe is funneling out. I need a legal wife to replace her, to use that standing to purge the system. Why me? I asked, my mind already racing, calculating the possibilities. First, you have motive. You despise Mark and Chloe. Second, your resume is impeccable. Former head of accounting for a major retail conglomerate, a licensed CPA, known for being an iron fist when it comes to cost control. Third, and most importantly, neither of us believes in love anymore. We can build a partnership based on mutual interest. He looked directly into my eyes, delivering his final proposition. If you agree, be at City Hall tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We'll get a marriage license. I glanced over at the other table. Mark was kissing Chloe's forehead, the smug look of a victor on his face. He thought I was a foolish, docile woman who only knew her way around a kitchen and a ledger. He thought he had won. I turned back to Alexander. 3 seconds. That was all the time I needed to decide on the biggest gamble of my life. I had already lost everything. I had nothing left to fear. All right, I replied, my voice firm. I agree. But I have one condition. I want full, unconditional autonomy over the finance department of Croft Maritime. You are not to interfere with my work. Alexander stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I'll see you tomorrow, Mrs. Croft. He left, leaving me with a folder and a plan for revenge that was beginning to take shape with crystal clarity in my mind. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. I chose a simple yet elegant cream-colored sheath dress that highlighted a slender figure I usually hid under baggy office wear. I applied my makeup meticulously, concealing the dark circles from a sleepless night spent reviewing corporate law. Staring at the woman in the mirror, I knew it was no longer yesterday's Emily. That Emily had died with the divorce decree. At 7:55 a.m. sharp, I was standing in front of the New York City Hall. A gleaming black Maybach pulled up silently beside me. The door opened, and Alexander stepped out. Today, he wore a crisp white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, making him look younger and less severe than the day before. You're punctual, he said, in place of a greeting. Professional habit, I replied curtly. We walked inside. The process of obtaining a marriage license and having the ceremony was surprisingly swift, thanks to Alexander's arrangements. When the pen hit the paper, when I signed my name next to Alexander Croft on the certificate, I felt a jolt run down my spine, not the thrill of love, but the excitement of a soldier being handed a heavy-duty weapon before heading into battle. The city clerk handed us our 2 official copies. Alexander took them and gave one to me. Welcome to Croft Maritime, he said, using my first name for the first time. Thank you, I smiled. A professional, perfect smile. Stepping out of City Hall, the morning sun made the certificate in my hand gleam. I took out my phone, placed the marriage certificate on the hood of his Maybach, and snapped a crystal-clear picture. In the photo, my name and Alexander's were side by side. The official seal, a bright splash of color against the polished black hood and the stylized gold C logo of his car. I opened my contacts, found the entry my love and name I hadn't had the heart to change, and sent the picture with a short, concise message. Thank you for quietly setting me free. It allowed me to get my paperwork in order just in time to become the legal wife of the chairman of Croft Maritime this morning. Good luck to you and your mistress. I hit send. The status changed to delivered. Alexander, standing beside me, had observed my actions without a word, a corner of his mouth twitching upwards. You're more aggressive than I thought. In business, as in war, the element of surprise accounts for 50% of the victory, I said, putting my phone away. Now, take me to the office. I need to start my work immediately. On the way to the Croft Maritime headquarters, Alexander handed me an employee ID card and an appointment letter. Chief Financial Officer, CFO. I raised an eyebrow. You trust me with this position right away? I don't trust you, he said bluntly. I trust your hatred and your competence. This position was previously controlled by Chloe through a puppet, the former chief accountant. I've just terminated him and put you in his place. You have the power of life and death in your hands. Use it well. I held the letter, feeling its weight. This wasn't just a job. It was a sword and a shield. I closed my eyes, visualizing the organizational chart of Croft Maritime I had studied all night. Chloe, though divorced, was still a major shareholder and knew many of the company's secrets. Her embezzlement couldn't have been a solo act. There had to be a network of accomplices supporting her. My mission was to sever every one of those connections, isolate Chloe, and, most importantly, find proof that she and Mark had colluded to launder money. I would make Mark regret ever underestimating a woman who kept the books. The car stopped in front of a towering 30-story glass skyscraper in the heart of the financial district. Alexander got out and walked around to open my door. This gesture of chivalry wasn't for me, but for the hundreds of employees watching from the lobby. Ready? He asked quietly. Always, I replied, holding my head high as I walked beside him. From that moment on, the war had officially begun. The phone in my handbag started vibrating violently the moment I stepped into the private elevator reserved for the chairman. I glanced at the screen. It was Mark. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it stopped, then ring again, and a third time. My silence, I knew, was the most potent form of psychological torture for him. Meanwhile, in a luxury condo in Soho, Mark was losing his mind. I could picture it perfectly. He would throw his phone onto the couch, his face beat red, pacing frantically. Chloe would be there, frowning, asking him what was wrong. And when he showed her the picture I sent, her perfectly made-up face would contort in shock and rage. Only when the elevator reached the 30th floor did I calmly answer the call. Hello? I said, my voice as neutral, as if I were speaking to a delivery person. Emily, what the hell is this? What is that picture? It's photoshopped, right? It has to be. Mark's voice shrieked through the phone, cracking with panic. He couldn't believe it, or rather, he didn't dare to. Do you think I have time to learn Photoshop? I scoffed. It's black and white, with an official seal. You're a business owner, Mark. Can't you tell a real document from a fake? When did you meet Croft? Were you cheating on me? He spat, resorting to the classic tactic of the guilty, baseless accusations. Don't measure others by your own standards. I cut him off, my voice turning to steel. You secretly finalized our divorce behind my back. The court has issued the decree. Legally, I was a single woman, free to marry whomever I please. Besides, aren't you shacking up with my new husband's ex-wife? In business terms, we could call this a fair trade. Mark was speechless. I could hear Chloe snatching the phone from him. You little bitch. You think you can just walk into Croft Maritime? As long as I'm here, you won't get anywhere. Hello, Chloe, I replied, my voice sweet but laced with venom. You're mistaken. I'm not walking in to climb the ladder. I'm walking in as the chairman's legal wife, the lady of the house. You, on the other hand, are now just a shareholder, an outsider. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I've just been appointed Chief Financial Officer. The very first thing I'll be doing this morning is auditing all outstanding accounts between Croft Maritime and your lover's company, Keystone Builders. You wouldn't dare, Chloe screamed. Why not? I continued. I hear Keystone Builders owes Croft a substantial amount for advanced material payments, yet hasn't broken ground on a single project. As CFO, I see this debt as a high-risk liability. I think it's time we called it in. Emily, don't do this. Mark grabbed the phone back, his tone shifting from fury to pleading. We can talk about this. What do you want? I'll give you a cut of the land deal money. Let's meet. The land deal money. I laughed, a cold, empty sound. You keep it. You're going to need a lot of it for the legal fees you'll be facing very soon. I hung up and turned off my phone. The elevator doors opened. Before me was the grand lobby of Croft Maritime. Employees bustled about, but everyone paused to bow their heads respectfully as Alexander passed. They glanced at me with curiosity and speculation. Alexander turned to me, a hint of admiration in his eyes. You've scared them half to death. But threats are one thing. Execution is another. Just watch me, I said, clutching my handbag as I strode purposefully toward the finance department. I wasn't making threats. I was declaring war. The finance and accounting department was on the 28th floor. A thick glass door separated the world of numbers from the rest of the company. I pushed it open and walked in, with Alexander right behind me. A silent, powerful endorsement. The room was buzzing with chatter, like a stock market floor. News of the chairman's lightning-fast marriage had clearly spread like wildfire. "Quiet, everyone," Alexander commanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that silenced the room instantly. All eyes turned to us. He gestured toward me. "This is Emily Carter, my wife, and also the new chief financial officer of this corporation. From this moment on, all decisions regarding expenditures and budget approvals must go through her. The official appointment will be in your inboxes within 5 minutes." A new wave of murmurs rose, this time more subdued. I scanned the room. In a corner, a middle-aged woman with thick, gold-rimmed glasses was staring at me. Her expression wasn't one of surprise, but of open hostility. That was Brenda Vance, the current chief accountant and Chloe's right-hand woman. I had studied her personnel file. Brenda was the one who had approved countless fraudulent expense reports for client entertainment, allowing Chloe to bleed the company dry. I walked directly to Brenda's desk. "Hello, Brenda. I need you to hand over all ledgers, digital signature tokens, and ERP system passwords." Immediately, Brenda stood up, crossing her arms in defiance, her attitude that of an untouchable long-time employee. "Miss Carter, a proper handover takes time. There are years of records here. You can't just demand them on the spot. Furthermore, I report to the board of directors, which includes Miss Chloe. Your appointment is abrupt. I need to confirm with her first." She was stalling, trying to buy time to destroy evidence or alter the books. "Brenda," I smiled, placing the appointment letter, signed in fresh ink by Alexander and bearing the corporate seal, on her desk. "According to company bylaws, the chairman has the right to make executive appointments in exigent circumstances. Miss Chloe is currently only a shareholder with no executive authority. The chairman's directive is final." I glanced at Alexander, then back at Brenda, my voice like ice. "If you do not complete the handover within 15 minutes, I will draft a termination letter for you on the grounds of insubordination and obstruction of business operations. Concurrently, I will have IT impound your computer and invite the authorities to investigate suspected embezzlement. The choice is yours, a quiet handover or a departure in handcuffs." Brenda's face went pale. She hadn't expected me to be so firm, so well-versed in the rules. She looked to Alexander for help, but he just stood there, arms crossed, his expression clearly stating, "I'm with my wife." Trembling, Brenda fumbled in her drawer and produced a set of keys and a token. I'll comply." "Good," I said, turning to the stunned employees. "From today, our procedures are changing. Any expenditure over $50,000 must be submitted directly to me for approval. Anyone caught signing off on a fraudulent invoice or falsifying a document can write their own resignation letter before I find out. My background is in forensic auditing. Do not try to play games with me." I ordered the IT department to immediately revoke Brenda's system access and change all administrative passwords. After Brenda had sullenly packed her personal belongings into a cardboard box and left, I sat down in the plush leather chair she had just vacated. I opened the computer and logged into the system. The numbers began to fill the screen. It was a chaotic mess, but it was also a treasure trove of criminal evidence. The desk phone rang. It was an internal call from Chloe. "You've got a lot of nerve, Emily. Firing my people." "This is just the warm-up," I replied, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "You should be more concerned about your own money. I'm seeing some questionable wire transfers to your brother's media company. The invoices for the services rendered look irregular." The line went silent, then a sharp click. She had hung up. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. The real battle was just beginning. I not only had to clean up this mess, but also set a trap that Mark and Chloe would walk right into. Alexander approached, placing a hot cup of coffee on my desk. "You did well. I didn't choose the wrong person." "Don't praise me yet," I said, taking a sip. The bitter coffee had a sweet aftertaste. "Brace yourself. A major storm is coming." All the lights in the office were out, save for the cool blue glow from my computer screen. The wall clock showed 10 p.m. Every other employee had gone home hours ago, but I was still here, buried in the mountain of ledgers Brenda had left behind. To me, numbers could talk, and these were screaming about fraud. I didn't need a team of movie-style hackers. I used the most fundamental auditing techniques, cross-referencing and verification. I opened the Q3 trial balance sheet. One line item immediately jumped out. External services and consulting fees had inexplicably tripled compared to the same quarter last year. I drilled down into the details of expense accounts 641 and 642. A long list of transactions for marketing, event organization, strategic consulting all led to a single vendor, Aura Media LLC. I copied Aura Media's EIN and pasted it into the state's business entity search portal. The result appeared instantly. The registered agent and sole owner, Kevin Vance. I smirked. Kevin Vance was Chloe's younger brother. This scheme was insultingly crude, funneling money from her husband's company to her brother's, and from there, into her own pocket. I continued, pulling up every electronic invoice submitted by Aura Media. The total value came to over $6 million in just 6 months. The descriptions on the invoices were vague. Logistics Solutions Consulting Fee, Client Conference Organization Fee. But when I cross-referenced the dates of these supposed conferences with the company's actual event calendar, there was nothing. No guest lists, no event photos, no signed-off contracts. This was a clear-cut case of invoice fraud designed to siphon cash from the company and evade corporate income tax. I printed all the bank statements and suspicious invoices, compiling them in a red file folder. This was just the tip of the iceberg. I needed to dig deeper, into the accounts payable. I scrolled down to the payable to suppliers section, account 331, and there it was, Keystone Builders, Mark's company. The outstanding balance was $2 million. I opened the contract details. Croft Maritime had contracted Keystone Builders to repair and upgrade the warehouse system at the Port Newark Elizabeth Marine Terminal. The contract was signed 3 months ago. Croft Maritime had advanced 50% of the contract value, $2 million. But when I checked the project progress reports, the percentage of work completed column showed a perfect, round zero. Mark had taken $2 million from Croft Maritime, but hadn't driven a single pile or laid a single brick. I picked up the phone and called the head of the warehouse project management team. Mr. Henderson? This is Emily Carter. Oh, Miss Carter, his voice was sleepy. Sorry to bother you this late. I have a question about the Port Newark upgrade project being handled by Keystone Builders. What's the current status? There was a pause on the other end, then a hesitant stammer. Well, ma'am, they haven't moved any equipment on site yet. I've pushed them several times, but their director keeps making excuses about waiting on imported materials. Miss Chloe also instructed us to just give them some time. I see. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Tomorrow morning, please send me a formal status report, countersigned by the independent supervisor. I hung up. It was all clear now. Mark had used the $2 million advance for his own cash flow, or worse, to buy that very development property he had used to trick me into signing the divorce papers. The office door opened. Alexander walked in, carrying 2 takeout containers. I thought you were planning to sleep here. Eat something, then you can get back to it. I looked at him, then at the pile of files on my desk. I found the fox's tail. This quickly? He set the food down and pulled up a chair beside me. His cologne was subtle, a pleasant and masculine scent, a stark contrast to the cheap cigarette smell that had started clinging to Mark recently. They were greedy, but not careful, I said, pointing to the screen. Or perhaps they were overconfident, thinking no one would dare audit the boss's wife's books. Look at this. $6 million wired to Chloe's brother. $2 million advanced to Mark for zero work. A total of $8 million drained in just 2 quarters. Alexander stared at the figures, his expression hardening. I knew Chloe was skimming, but I never imagined it was this much. No wonder the company's operating cash flow has been so tight lately. For a logistics giant, cash flow was its lifeblood. Losing $8 million in cash so quickly was like severing a major artery. Don't worry, I said. I'll get it all back, principal and interest. I opened a container. The aroma of grilled steak filled the air, and my stomach rumbled. Eat, he said, handing me a fork. You need your strength. We have a very interesting board of directors meeting tomorrow. I took the fork. For the first time in months, I could actually taste my food. It wasn't because the meal was exceptional, but because I knew I was no longer fighting this war alone. Alexander drove me back to his private mansion in the Hamptons at midnight. The stark white estate, isolated on a bluff overlooking the Atlantic, was immense but felt cold. It was just like its owner, elegant, powerful, but solitary. You can take this room, he said, opening the door to a large suite on the second floor with a direct view of the ocean. I had it furnished for you. If you need anything, just ask the housekeeper. I stepped inside. Everything was brand new, from the bed linens to the curtains. There was no trace of another woman, proving either that Alexander had lived alone for a long time, or that Chloe had never set foot in this room. Thank you. He leaned against the door frame, watching me for a moment before speaking. Emily, this is a contractual marriage. I will respect your privacy, but in front of the staff and outsiders, we must play our parts convincingly. I understand. I'm a professional. The next morning, I came down for breakfast. The dining table was long enough for 20, but only 2 place settings were laid out at one end. Alexander was already there, drinking black coffee and reading financial reports on his iPad. Good morning, I said, taking my seat. Morning. Did you sleep well? He asked, his eyes not leaving the screen. Very well. The bed is much more comfortable than the couch I've been relegated to for the past month at Mark's house. The housekeeper brought out 2 plates of omelets and toast. I looked at the steaming food and felt a pang of sadness. It had been so long since someone had cooked for me. At home with Mark, I was always the first one up, making breakfast for him, ironing his shirts, before rushing off to my own job. What's wrong? Not to your liking? Alexander finally looked up, noticing my hesitation. No, I shook my head, picking up my fork. It's just unfamiliar. We ate in silence for a few minutes before Alexander spoke. What's your plan for the Keystone Builders debt today? I swallowed a bite of omelet and dabbed my mouth with a napkin. I'm not going to pursue it through conventional means. If I send a demand letter, he'll just make excuses or declare insolvency. I'm going to use a different tactic. Which is, he asked, intrigued. I'm going to send a formal notice to the bank that issued the performance bond and the advance payment guarantee for that contract. If Keystone Builders fails to perform, the bank is obligated to repay Croft Maritime. Then, the bank can go after Mark to collect their own debt. Alexander let out a short, sharp laugh. A genuine, appreciative laugh. Vicious. Once the bank gets involved, he'll have no choice but to sell that property to pay them back. If he doesn't, he'll be blacklisted, his credit destroyed. He'll never get another loan in his life. And that's not all, I continued, my eyes sharp. I'm going to engage our independent auditors to conduct a forensic review of the cost basis for all past projects Keystone did for us. I suspect he's been inflating material and labor costs for years. If we find proof, this becomes a criminal case, not just a civil one. Alexander looked at me, his expression shifting from amusement to respect. You really were born to be my wife. We're cut from the same cloth. Breakfast concluded in a strange but harmonious atmosphere. 2 wounded souls finding a strange kinship in strategy and ambition. I realized that living with a man as intelligent and straightforward as Alexander was far more pleasant than serving a hypocrite like Mark. The morning at the office began with an internal purge. I called an emergency meeting with the entire accounting department and the project management team. I threw the red file folder from last night onto the conference table. The sharp thud made everyone jump. In this folder is a list of all suspected fraudulent invoices from Aura Media and the status of the Keystone Builders contract. Who is directly responsible for managing these accounts? A young analyst timidly raised his hand. Brenda, manage them directly, ma'am. We just processed the paperwork she gave us. Processing paperwork without verifying its legitimacy is a dereliction of duty, I said sharply. From today, I am overhauling the entire process. Anyone who comes forward to report past irregularities they were aware of will be granted amnesty and will keep their job. Anyone caught concealing information will be terminated and recommended for prosecution. My declaration was like a bucket of ice water on anyone considering staying silent. Immediately after the meeting, 3 employees knocked on my door, asking for a private word to provide more information. From their testimonies, I pieced together the full picture of Mark and Chloe's money laundering scheme. Mark wasn't just embezzling from his own company. He had turned Keystone Builders into a vehicle for generating fake expenses for Croft Maritime. When Croft needed to reduce its taxable income, Chloe would direct Mark to issue fraudulent invoices for non-existent labor and materials. Money flowed from Croft to Keystone, and then Mark would withdraw it as cash, keep a percentage for himself, and give the rest back to Chloe. It was a perfect, closed loop, but they had made one fatal error. The flow of money didn't match any real-world flow of goods or services. I sat at my screen, drawing a cash flow diagram. An arrow went from Croft Maritime to Keystone Builders, from Keystone to Mark's personal account, and from Mark's account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands under the name Linda Miller. I zoomed in on the name. It wasn't random. It was Mark's mother's maiden name. I shuddered. He had used his own mother's name to receive dirty money. He hadn't just deceived me. He had dragged his elderly mother, living quietly in her small town, into a federal crime without her knowledge. His cruelty knew no bounds. The door burst open. It wasn't Alexander. It was Chloe. She stormed in without knocking, flanked by 2 large bodyguards. "What the hell did you do? Why did the bank just freeze Keystone's accounts?" she roared, slamming her hand on my desk. I calmly took off my glasses and looked at her. "Hello, Chloe. Entering my office without knocking is a violation of company policy. As for a partner's bank account being frozen, that's a matter for the bank. Why are you asking me? Unless, of course, you have a personal stake in my ex-husband's company." "Don't play dumb with me," Chloe snarled, pointing a finger at my face. "You sent the notice to the bank demanding the advance payment back, didn't you? You're trying to ruin Mark." "I'm simply fulfilling my duties as CFO," I replied coolly. "Shareholder money cannot be wasted. $2 million is not a small sum. If Keystone Builders can prove its ability to complete the project, the bank will unfreeze the account." "You're overreacting." Chloe gritted her teeth. "You're good. But I'm warning you. If you touch my interests, I'll make your life a living hell. You think Alexander loves you? He's just using you." "At least he's using me openly and legally," I said, standing up to face her, my height matching hers. "You and Mark sneak around behind people's backs. That's what's truly pathetic. Go tell Mark to get his money ready. He has 3 days to pay it back." Chloe scoffed and stormed out. I knew she was scared. I was cutting off her tentacles, one by one. 3 days later, just as I predicted, Mark couldn't come up with the money to repay the bank. He was cornered, and a cornered animal bites indiscriminately. On Monday morning, an anonymous email was sent to the entire Croft Maritime Company with a link. The subject line was sensational. "The truth about the new CFO, gold digger or high-class escort." The link led to a cleverly edited video clip. It showed footage of me entering a hotel from an old business trip where I was meeting a client spliced with suggestive audio. Below, it was a fabricated story claiming I had been having an affair with Alexander for years, had plotted to steal Mark's assets, and then dumped him for a billionaire. The entire company was in an uproar. The looks I received shifted from respect to contempt and morbid curiosity. I sat in my office, my hand clenched on the computer mouse. Mark was even more despicable than I had imagined. He was trying to destroy my reputation with public opinion, to force me to resign. My phone rang. It was Alexander. "Have you seen the email?" His voice was unusually calm. "I have. He's playing dirty. Don't worry. Stay in your office. Don't go out. I'll handle this." 5 minutes later, the building's PA system crackled to life. Alexander's voice, firm and commanding, requested all employees to gather in the main lobby immediately. I went down as well. Alexander stood on a raised platform, his face a cold, furious mask. Beside him were the head of IT and the company's chief legal counsel. "I have just been made aware of an email slandering my wife, Emily Carter," he announced, his voice echoing through the vast space. "I am here to state unequivocally that this is a baseless and malicious lie. Our IT department has already traced the IP address of the sender. It originated from a public internet cafe near the private residence of Mr. Mark Peterson, director of Keystone Builders." He gestured, and the large screen behind him lit up with security footage from the internet cafe. There, clear as day, was Mark, wearing a baseball cap and a mask, hunched over a computer at the exact time the email was sent. The lobby erupted in gasps. "Our lawyers are currently filing a criminal complaint against Mr. Peterson for libel and defamation," Alexander continued. "Furthermore, I want to make one thing clear. Any Croft Maritime employee who is found discussing or sharing this false information will be terminated immediately. We are a Fortune 500 company, not a high school cafeteria for cheap gossip." The crowd fell silent. Alexander had extinguished the fire of public opinion with irrefutable proof before it could even spread. Then he turned to me, his gaze softening slightly. "And I have one more gift for him." He handed me a blue folder. "What's this?" I asked. "Mark's loan file from East West Commercial Bank. He mortgaged all his equipment, his workshop, and even his parents' house to borrow $1 million. The loan is 10 days past due and has been classified as non-performing. The bank is preparing to foreclose. I opened the file. It was Mark's signature. He had hidden this loan from me, using the money for gambling and to support Chloe. I've been in touch with the bank, Alexander said, a wolfish grin on his face. They've agreed to sell the distressed debt to an asset management company, in which I am the majority shareholder. I understood instantly. So you're Mark's new creditor? No, he said, looking me straight in the eye. We are. As a married couple, we are now his single largest creditor. The power of life and death is in your hands. Do you want him to survive, or do you want to crush him? All it takes is a nod from you. Holding the debt file, I felt as if I were holding a death sentence for Mark. But I didn't want him to die quickly. I wanted him to taste the same powerlessness and abject fear that I had endured. I scheduled a meeting with Mark, not at a cafe, but at the desolate office of Keystone Builders. When I arrived, the office was empty. Most of the staff had quit over unpaid wages. Mark sat slumped at his desk, surrounded by empty liquor bottles and overflowing ashtrays. He looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. Seeing me, he looked up, his bloodshot eyes filled with rage. What are you doing here? Came to laugh at me? I came to collect a debt, I said coldly, placing the blue folder on his desk. He glanced at it and sneered. Debt? I owe the bank, not you. You can't scare me. The worst they can do is take the workshop. I don't give a damn. Look more closely, I said, pointing to the deed of assignment. The bank sold your debt to a company called Aegis Capital, and the legal representative of Aegis Capital, coincidentally, is me, Emily Carter. The color drained from Mark's face. He snatched the paper, his hands shaking violently. Impossible. How could you afford to buy my debt? It was Croft, wasn't it? It was him. Who's behind it doesn't matter. What matters is that I am now your creditor, and according to the terms of the loan, I have the right to demand immediate seizure of all collateral assets to settle the debt. I looked around the shabby office. This workshop and those rusty old excavators won't be enough. Oh, and then there's your parents' house in Pennsylvania. The mortgage agreement clearly lists the property and land owned by Mr. and Mrs. Miller. At the mention of his parents, true panic set in. He lunged toward me, trying to grab my arm, but I stepped back. Alexander's 2 bodyguards, who had followed me in, immediately stepped forward to block him. Emily, please, I'm begging you. Mark collapsed to his knees, sobbing. Take the company. Take everything. Just don't touch my parents' house. They're old, they're frail. If they find out the house is being repossessed, it will kill them. Seeing the man who was once my husband groveling on the floor, I felt no satisfaction, only disgust. He was using his parents as a shield for his own failures, after he had been the one to gamble away their home. When you tricked me into signing those divorce papers, did you think about how I'd be left homeless? I asked, my voice like a scalpel. When you cheated on me with Chloe, did you think about my feelings? I was wrong. Chloe manipulated me. She said if I helped her launder this one last batch of money, we'd have millions to split. I was greedy. I was blind. Emily, for the sake of our 10 years together, please, give me a way out. Our 10 years together ended the moment you signed that divorce petition, I said, turning away. I'll give you 2 options. 1, you sign over all shares of Keystone Builders and the new development property to me to offset the debt. 2, tomorrow, I will have the sheriff serve an eviction notice at your parents' house. Mark looked up, his face ashen. That land is all I have left. You have no room to bargain. You have 5 minutes. I looked at my watch. Every tick felt like a hammer blow against his sanity. Okay, I'll sign, he finally whispered, his head bowed in defeat. I signaled to my lawyer, who produced the pre-drafted documents. Mark took the pen, his hand shaking, and signed each page. With every signature, a piece of his life force seemed to drain away. Holding the signed documents, I felt a sense of relief. I had taken back what was mine, and more importantly, I had stripped him of his tool for illicit gains. You're broke now, Mark, I said as my final words before walking out. Try to live an honest life. Don't make your parents suffer anymore. Outside, Alexander was waiting in the car. He looked at me and smiled. Is it done? It's done, he signed. Are you happy? I leaned my head against the seat, watching the bustling city streets. Not happy, but it feels just. My personal revenge was half complete, but the war against Chloe and the money laundering empire behind her was the real challenge. Mark was just a pawn. Chloe was the queen. and I knew she wouldn't stay quiet now that her pawn had been taken off the board. I didn't rush to celebrate my victory over Mark. To me, he was merely a pawn on the vast chessboard Chloe controlled. The real enemy was still lurking in the shadows. And to draw her out, I needed another pawn, one who was once Chloe's most trusted ally, Brenda Vance. After being fired from Croft Maritime, Brenda was unemployed. With a professional record, tarnished by a termination for ethical violations, no reputable firm would touch her. I had a private investigator follow her and learned she was living in a rundown rented apartment on the outskirts of Queens, constantly harassed by loan sharks over her gambling debts. I decided it was time to make my next move. On a Wednesday afternoon, I drove to a quiet cafe in a remote part of the Bronx where I had arranged to meet Brenda. When I entered, she was huddled in a corner, her hands trembling as she held a glass of water. She looked decades older than she had in her power suits. Seeing me, her eyes filled with terror, and she started to get up to flee. "Sit down, Brenda," I said, my voice calm but carrying enough weight to root her to the spot. "If you walk out that door, I will forward this file to the district attorney's office immediately." I placed a brown envelope on the table. Brenda stared at it, swallowing hard. What? What do you want?" "I'm unemployed. I have nothing left for you to take." "You may be unemployed, but your crimes are still on the record," I said, opening the envelope and pulling out several documents. "This is evidence that you colluded with an auto repair shop to inflate maintenance costs for the company's fleet of trucks for the past 3 years. The total amount you personally pocketed exceeds $300,000. That's grand larceny, Brenda. You're looking at 5 to 15 years in prison." The blood drained from Brenda's face. She trembled and slid from her chair, kneeling on the floor beside the table. "Miss Carter, please, have mercy. I have an elderly mother and a young son. I can't go to prison. I gambled all that money away. I have no way to pay it back." I looked down at the weeping woman, feeling not an ounce of pity, but my strategic mind told me this was the perfect opportunity. "Get up. I didn't come here to listen to your sob story. I can make this go away. I can even help you pay off your loan sharks. On one condition." Brenda looked up, a glimmer of desperate hope in her eyes. "What condition?" "I'll do anything you say, as long as I don't go to jail." "I want you to be my spy," I said, lowering my voice and looking directly into her eyes. "I know you're still in contact with Chloe. She needs a trusted person to handle her back-channel transactions now that she can't use anyone from Croft Maritime. I want you to go back to her, pretend to be loyal, and report her every move to me." Brenda hesitated. She knew how ruthless Chloe could be, but the fear of prison was greater. "If Chloe finds out, she'll kill me. If you don't do this, the police will be at your door tomorrow," I stated coldly. "Besides, Chloe abandoned you when you got fired, didn't she? Did she offer you a single dollar to pay your debts? Or did she just toss you aside like a used-up tool?" My words hit a nerve. Brenda's fists clenched, her expression shifting from fear to resentment. "You're right. That ungrateful bitch. I made her millions, and when I was in trouble, she wouldn't even take my calls." "Fine. I'll do it. What do you want to know?" "I want to know where Chloe is moving her assets. I've heard rumors she's liquidating everything to get cash, and fast." Brenda glanced around nervously, then leaned in close to whisper. "She's planning something big. She's been selling off properties in Miami and Aspen, raising about $12 million in cash. She's planning to wire the money to a shell corporation in Cyprus this Friday afternoon, disguised as an investment consulting contract. Once the money is through, she's flying there to live permanently, leaving Croft Maritime to deal with all the debt and legal fallout here. $12 million. A staggering sum. If Chloe pulled this off, Croft Maritime would suffer a devastating blow. Its cash flow would be crippled. And more importantly, she would escape justice completely. Do you know which bank she's using for the transaction? International VIP Bank, the Manhattan branch. She's very close with the branch manager there, so they'll expedite the international wire for her." I smiled. This information was priceless. "Excellent. Keep monitoring her and let me know the exact time she initiates the transfer. Once this is over, I will burn this file of evidence against you and give you a bonus to start a new life." Brenda nodded eagerly. I stood up, left cash for the drinks on the table, and walked out. The afternoon sun cast a long shadow on the pavement. A perfect plan of encirclement had just formed in my mind. This Friday afternoon was going to be one Chloe would never forget. Friday afternoon, the atmosphere in my office was as tense as a drawn bowstring. Outside, a torrential rain lashed against the windows, as if trying to shatter the quiet inside. I sat before my computer screen, which displayed the cash management interface for Croft Maritime's corporate banking system. Alexander sat in the chair opposite me, idly turning a pen in his hand, his eyes glued to his phone. We were waiting for a text from Brenda. 2:30 p.m. Still nothing. If Chloe wanted the international wire to go through today, she had to execute it before the cutoff time. The SWIFT system for international payments typically closed for the day around 3:30 p.m., 4 p.m. at the latest. Any later, and the transaction would be held until Monday. For a fugitive like Chloe, a single day was a lifetime of risk. 2:45 p.m. My phone vibrated. A text from Brenda. She just arrived at the bank, going into the VIP lounge to meet the branch manager. The fish is in the net, I told Alexander. She's at the bank. He nodded, his face tense. Are you sure you can stop it? If that money leaves the country, it's gone for good. Don't worry. The net is already in place. I opened another chat window and messaged Michael, the head of corporate banking at VIP Bank and an old friend from business school. I had already given him a heads up about a potentially fraudulent transaction involving Chloe's account. As CFO of Croft Maritime, I had the authority to request a review or freeze on unusual transactions from accounts tied to a major shareholder involved in a legal dispute. 3:10 p.m. The system alerted me to a change in account balance. A wire transfer for $12 million had just been initiated from Chloe's personal account. The memo read, "Payment for investment consulting contract number 01-2023. The beneficiary was Sunny Investment Corp. in Cyprus." "This is it," I said, pointing at the screen. The transaction status was pending approval. I immediately called Michael. "Mike, it's Emily. The $12 million wire just hit the system. That's the embezzled money I told you about. You need to block it now." I could hear frantic typing on the other end. "I see it, Emily. That's a huge amount. But the branch is pushing hard for immediate approval. The manager is saying she's a top-tier client, and all the paperwork, including the foreign contract, is in order. If I block it without cause, I'll face a major complaint. The paperwork is fake. Sunny Investment is a shell company," I said quickly, my voice sharp. "I am sending you an official, expedited request right now to freeze Chloe's assets, based on a lawsuit our company just filed with the city court regarding misappropriation of funds. Just use the excuse that the system flagged it for a compliance risk review. All you have to do is hold that transaction until after 3:30 p.m. and she's finished." "All right, I trust you," he said. "I'll route it to the compliance department for a full review. That'll take at least 2 hours. Past the cutoff time, even God can't get that wire through." I hung up, letting out a breath of relief. On my screen, the transaction status changed from pending approval to under review. In the bank's VIP lounge, I could imagine the chaos. Chloe would be on pins and needles, watching the clock. 3:20 p.m. Only 10 minutes left. Brenda texted again. She's screaming at the bank staff, demanding to speak to the CEO. Her face is bright red. I texted back. "Let her scream. The CEO is in a meeting with me right now." There was no meeting, of course, but I knew bank procedures. Once a transaction was flagged as high risk, no one would dare approve it without extensive due diligence, especially with tightening anti-money laundering regulations. 3:30 p.m. The SWIFT system closed for the day. Chloe's wire transfer was officially rejected, with the reason cited as transaction requires additional documentation to verify legal source of funds. The money was still in her account, but it was now frozen. She couldn't transfer it, and she couldn't withdraw it. Alexander looked at me, his eyes filled with genuine admiration. He stood, poured 2 glasses of wine, and handed one to me. "Congratulations. A perfect knockout. You not only saved the money, but you've cut off her escape route." I swirled the wine in my glass. Its deep red color looked like the blood of an enemy. It's not over yet. When an animal is cornered, it turns on its own kind. Now that Chloe has lost the money, the first person she'll blame is Mark. Let's sit back and watch the next act. Just as I predicted, the failure at the bank sent Chloe into a rage. She couldn't believe her perfect escape plan had been foiled at the last second by a technical issue. As she stormed out of the bank, she got a call from Mark. My ex-husband was in a more desperate state than ever. After signing away his assets to me, he was hounded by the loan sharks he'd borrowed from to cover his gambling losses. They had surrounded his parents' house in Pennsylvania. He was hiding in a cheap motel, calling Chloe as his last hope. "Chloe, you have to help me." Mark's voice was frantic. They're threatening to kill my whole family if I don't pay them $500,000 by tonight. Please, just lend me something. I'll be your slave for life to pay you back. Chloe, already furious about her frozen $12 million, completely snapped. Shut up, she screamed into the phone, shedding any semblance of her sophisticated image. I'm ruined, you idiot. My money is all frozen because of your pathetic ex-wife. You're useless. If you hadn't been so stupid as to sign the divorce agreement, she wouldn't have had the leverage to do this. What are you talking about? Mark was stunned. What does Emily have to do with this? Ask her yourself. She's the one who got the bank to block my transfer. You're both worthless pieces of trash. Don't you ever call me again. Chloe hung up and blocked his number. She got in her car and ordered the driver to take her straight to her townhouse, where she kept her remaining valuables, jewelry, diamonds. She had to find another way out, maybe an overland route across the border. On the other end, Mark dropped the phone. His last hope was gone. He sank to the floor of the grimy motel room, surrounded by empty instant noodle cups. He realized he had lost everything: his wife, his home, his career, and now, the mistress he thought would bring him a life of luxury. He could hear heavy footsteps and shouting in the hallway. Mark, we know you're in there. Open up. You can't hide from us. Terrified, Mark looked at the window. The third floor wasn't too high, but a jump would still mean broken bones. He had no way out. In his desperation, he resorted to a familiar, cowardly tactic, faking an illness to evade responsibility. He grabbed a small paring knife from the table and made a shallow cut on his wrist enough to draw blood, but not life-threatening. Then, he collapsed to the floor, pretending to have a seizure. He knew if he was hospitalized, the loan sharks wouldn't dare cause trouble there, and the police would have to protect him. When the enforcers broke down the door, they found Mark lying motionless in what looked like a pool of blood. He had added ketchup from a packet for dramatic effect. Panicked at the thought of a murder charge, they fled. The motel manager, hearing the commotion, rushed in and immediately called 911. Mark was taken to Bellevue Hospital. He lay on the gurney, eyes squeezed shut, but he could hear everything. I made it, he thought. At least I'm safe for tonight. But he didn't know that news of his attempted suicide had been relayed to me by Alexander's people almost instantly. He's putting on a show, I said, watching the security footage from the motel hallway that my investigator had sent. The way he was smearing ketchup on himself was just pathetic. What do you want to do? Alexander asked, adjusting his tie. Pay a visit to an old patient? Of course. We were married for 10 years, after all. Besides, I need to give him a dose of medicine that will really wake him up. The emergency room smelled strongly of antiseptic. Mark lay in a hospital bed, his wrist bandaged, an oxygen mask over his face. He was feigning a deep coma, but I noticed the heart monitor showed a steady, even slightly rapid, pulse. Alexander and I walked in. I wore an all-black suit, carrying a bouquet of white lilies, the kind used for funerals. Alexander was beside me, carrying a sleek black leather briefcase. A nurse tried to stop us, but Alexander flashed a hospital VIP donor card. Croft Maritime was a major benefactor. The nurse bowed her head and quietly closed the door behind us. I approached the bed and placed the white lilies on the nightstand. The sharp click of my heels on the tile floor echoed in the quiet room. Stop pretending, Mark. Your acting is terrible. He remained still, but his eyelids fluttered. He was trying to outlast me. If you won't wake up, I suppose I'll have to talk to the corpse, I said, pulling up a chair. The doctor said your wrist wound was superficial. 3 stitches, but there's no cure for your disease of cowardice. Knowing the act was up, Mark slowly opened his eyes and removed the oxygen mask. He looked at us with a mixture of hatred and fear. What are you two doing here? Came to see if I was dead yet? Your death would be too easy for you. Alexander spoke up from the foot of the bed. We came to bring you some good news. The loan sharks who were after you. The police raided their entire operation last night. Mark's eyes lit up. Really? So, I'm safe? Safe from them, I said with a smile that was no longer gentle, but as sharp as a surgeon's blade, but not from the law. I nodded to Alexander. He opened his briefcase and took out a document with the official seal of the IRS. This is a formal notice of criminal investigation for tax evasion against Keystone Builders. The total amount of fraudulent invoices and unpaid taxes comes to $2 million. The investigators have more than enough evidence of you purchasing fake invoices from a network of shell companies run by Chloe's family. Mark shot up in bed, forgetting the pain in his wrist. No, it wasn't just me. It was Chloe. She told me to do it. I just signed the papers. You signed, which means you are legally responsible. I replied coldly. Chloe is smart. Her name isn't on a single document related to your company. Every signature, every seal, belongs to the director, Mark Peterson. Who do you think a jury will believe? A man drowning in debt, or the black and white evidence? Mark began to tremble, sweat pouring down his face. He knew he was facing prison. A tax evasion case of this magnitude meant a minimum of 10 years. Emily, help me, he cried, resorting to his old tricks and scrambling out of bed to kneel before me. You're a CFO, you know the law. Help me. I don't want to go to jail. I have my elderly parents. I looked at him without a shred of pity. I gave you a chance when I let you sign over your assets to clear your bank debt. That could have been the end of it. But your greed, and Chloe's, was too great. Is there a way out? Alexander interjected, playing the good cop in our little drama. If you cooperate with the authorities, give a full confession, and provide evidence against the true mastermind, you might receive a lighter sentence. Mark looked up as if grabbing a life raft. He turned to Alexander, nodding frantically. I'll talk. I'll tell them everything. I kept a ledger, a black book, with all the cash splits with Chloe. She made me record it all for her records. I hid it in the safe at my parents' house. Alexander and I exchanged a look. This was it. This was what we needed. That ledger would be the final nail in Chloe's coffin. Good, I said, standing up. You rest here. An investigator will be here shortly to take your statement. Be honest. It's your only way out. We walked out of the hospital room. Mark sat collapsed on the floor, his face a mask of despair. He knew his life as he knew it was over, but at least he had a chance to drag Chloe down with him. In the hallway, Alexander took my hand and squeezed it. You're brilliant. One stone, two birds. You took care of Mark and got the evidence to put Chloe away. It was a team effort, I said, pulling my hand back to fix my hair. Now, let's go get that ledger. Before Chloe senses the danger, the rain had stopped. A faint rainbow was visible on the horizon. I took a deep breath of the clean, post-storm air. The war was almost over. I and Alexander left the hospital immediately. He suggested his driver take us, but I insisted on driving myself. The feeling of controlling the car as it sped through the night helped to calm my mind. The Maybach flew down the interstate, heading west towards Pennsylvania, where Mark's parents lived. His hometown was a small, working-class town surrounded by rolling hills and farmland. It had been 3 years since I was last here, for his grandfather's funeral. Back then, I was still the dutiful daughter-in-law, bustling in the kitchen, cooking for the entire extended family. What are you thinking about? Alexander asked, breaking the silence. I'm thinking about Mark's parents, I admitted. They're simple, hardworking people. They spent their whole lives working the land. They were always so kind to me. If they knew what their son had become, and that the daughter-in-law they loved was the one putting him in jail, I think the shock would destroy them. Alexander sighed, looking out at the dark landscape. That is the tragedy of greed. Mark chose this path. He has to face the consequences. And you are doing the right thing. If you let them continue, how many more families would be ruined by their dirty money? I nodded, but my heart was heavy. Justice could be a cruel thing. At 3 a.m., our car pulled up in front of a familiar, modest 3-bedroom house with a red-shingled roof. The gate was rusted, but the bougainvillea on the porch was still in full bloom under the pale yellow streetlights. I got out, the cold night air seeping into my clothes. A dog in the yard began to bark. A moment later, a light flickered on inside, and the front door opened. Mark's father, Mr. Miller, stepped out in an old bathrobe, holding a flashlight. Who's there? He called out, his voice hoarse with sleep. Dad, it's Emily, I said. He squinted. Then his face broke into a smile. Emily, child, what are you doing here at this hour? Where's Mark? He hurried to open the gate. Mrs. Miller came running out too, grabbing my hands. You came all this way and didn't even call. Oh, you're freezing. Come inside, come inside. Their warmth and kindness made my heart ache. They knew nothing of the divorce, nothing of the hurricane tearing through our lives in the city. Mark had hidden everything. We had an urgent matter to attend to nearby. This is my colleague, Alexander. I introduced him briefly. They welcomed us warmly, making tea and bringing out cookies. The house was exactly as I remembered it, simple and cozy. Our wedding photos still hung on the wall. Our bright smiles from that day now seemed like a bitter joke. Dad, Mom, I began, setting down my teacup and taking a deep breath for courage. I'm so sorry. I didn't come here just to visit. I came to get something that Mark hid in your safe. Mr. Miller looked surprised. What did he hide? He told us that safe was just for the house deeds. He hid evidence of his crimes. Dad, I said directly. Mark has been involved in illegal business, tax evasion, and money laundering. The police are investigating. If I don't get this evidence and turn it in to plead for leniency, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. The teacup slipped from Mrs. Miller's hand and shattered on the floor. She trembled, gripping the table. What are you saying? Our Mark? He's such a good boy. He's changed, Mom. He fell in with the wrong people, got greedy. Please, believe me. I'm the only one who can help him right now. Mr. Miller stared at me, his old, clouded eyes filled with a deep, knowing pain. He knew me. He knew I would never lie about something so serious. He slowly stood and went into the bedroom. A moment later, he returned with a small wooden box. He sent this last week. Said it was a good luck charm for his business. Told us never to open it. Is this it? I opened the box. Inside was a black leather-bound notebook and a USB drive. I flipped through a few pages. It was Mark's handwriting, meticulously recording dates, times, amounts received from Chloe, where the money went, who got what percentage. This was it, the Book of Death. I closed it and took Mrs. Miller's wrinkled hand. Thank you. I promise I will do everything I can to get him a reduced sentence. But I have to tell you one more thing. What else could there be? She asked, tears welling in her eyes. Mark and I are divorced. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Mrs. Miller broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Mr. Miller collapsed into his chair, his elderly face completely crumbling. I couldn't stay any longer. I was afraid I would break down too. I left an envelope of cash on the table, my first month's salary from Croft Maritime. Please, use this for your expenses. I have to go now to make it back in time. Alexander and I walked quickly to the car. Behind us, Mrs. Miller's cries echoed in the quiet night. Once in the car, I buried my face in the steering wheel and finally let my own tears flow. Let it out, Alexander said, placing a hand on my shoulder. You've done everything you could. I cried until I had no tears left, crying for 10 years of a broken marriage, for 2 innocent old people, and for my own dead naivete. As dawn broke on the horizon, I wiped my eyes and started the car. Let's go home. We have important business to conduct with the police. Chloe isn't getting away with this. At 8 a.m. on Monday, the Croft Maritime headquarters was surrounded by police cars and news vans. The story of a billion-dollar money laundering scandal had been leaked partly, of course, due to a strategic tip from Alexander's PR team. Alexander and I sat in his office, watching the events unfold on the security monitors. Has the evidence been delivered to the investigators? He asked the chief legal counsel over the phone. Delivered and verified at 6 a.m. this morning. Mr. Croft, the lead agent from the FBI's white-collar crime division, reviewed it personally and has signed the warrant for Miss Chloe Vance's immediate arrest, the lawyer replied. Good. And Mark? He's being transferred from the hospital to a federal detention center as we speak. I looked out the window at the storm clouds gathering. The legal storm had finally made landfall. Meanwhile, at Chloe's townhouse in the Upper East Side, chaos reigned. After a sleepless night, she was frantically stuffing jewelry, watches, and stacks of cash into a large suitcase. She could feel the net closing in. Unable to wire the money, she was resorting to her backup plan, escaping to Canada by a clandestine route, then flying to Europe. She had paid a team of smugglers $50,000. Hurry up, she snapped at her maid. Forget the Hermes bags. Just bring the diamonds. The doorbell rang insistently. Chloe jumped, dropping a diamond ring. She looked at the security monitor. Police. Dozens of heavily armed officers were at her gate. An officer with a bullhorn was demanding she open the door. Chloe Vance, this is the FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest. Open the door and cooperate. Her face went ashen. She ran for the back door, which led to a service alley and the street. A getaway car was supposed to be waiting. But Chloe had made one final miscalculation. Alexander and I had anticipated this. As she threw open the back door, she froze. Standing before her were not her hired drivers, but 2 tall, imposing federal agents. Going somewhere, Miss Vance?" One of them asked dryly. Chloe stumbled backward, dropping the suitcase. Cash and jewels scattered across the floor. She turned to run back inside, but a tactical team had already breached the front door. "Trapped," she screamed in desperation. "I'm innocent. You can't do this. This is a setup. I want my lawyer." An agent coolly read her rights and snapped handcuffs on her wrists. The image of the once powerful socialite, now disheveled and defeated, being led away by police, was captured by dozens of reporters lying in wait. Within an hour, the photo of the logistics queen's downfall was on every news site. Stocks of companies associated with her family plummeted. I turned off the monitor. "It's over." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I knew it was Brenda. "Thank you, Miss Carter. I saw the news. I will keep my promise and disappear from this city." I deleted the message. Brenda was also a victim of her own greed and weakness. I had no desire for total annihilation. Alexander poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to me. "To justice and to peace." I clinked my glass against his, but I didn't feel the elation I had expected. This victory tasted of Mrs. Miller's tears and the bitter sting of betrayal. I looked at Alexander, the man who had been my ally through this entire war. He was looking back at me, his gaze no longer cold and calculating, but filled with a deep understanding. "I'm tired," I said softly. "Rest. Let the lawyers handle the rest. You have the day off." I smiled, and for the first time, it felt light and genuine. The T-16 Federal Detention Center, 1 month later. I was granted a visit to see Mark to finalize some legal paperwork regarding the assets. He was gaunt, his head shaved, dressed in a baggy orange jumpsuit. His eyes were sunken from lack of sleep. When he saw me, he looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "How are you?" I asked, the question both a formality and a source of pain. "Worse than dead," he mumbled. "Being in here, I finally understand the price. Every night, I dream of my parents, I dream of you. Your parents are fine. I've been sending them money every month. They think you're on a long business trip overseas." I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. Mark's head snapped up, tears streaming down his face. You're still taking care of them? After everything I did to you?" "I'm doing it for my own conscience, not for you," I said firmly. "They are good people. They don't deserve this." I pushed a document through the slot in the glass partition. "This is a civil settlement. Sign it. I will use the assets you transferred to me to pay back the taxes you evaded. It will be considered a mitigating factor. Your sentence could be reduced from 15 years to maybe 7 or 8. Mark took the pen, his hand shaking. He stared at me. "Why? Why are you helping me? You should hate me." "I do hate you," I said, looking him directly in the eye, with every fiber of my being. "But I don't want to keep that dirty money. I want to erase every trace of you from my life, so I can start over without guilt. Consider this the last bit of decency I can offer the man I once called my husband." He collapsed onto the table, sobbing like a child. He signed the paper, his signature a shaky scrawl blurred by tears. Leaving the visitation room, I ran into Chloe's lawyer. He shook his head wearily when he saw me. "How is she?" I asked. "Terrible. She still refuses to admit guilt, just screams about suing you and Mr. Croft. But the evidence in the ledger and Mark's testimony is airtight. She's facing life in prison for masterminding a massive money laundering and embezzlement scheme. All her assets are frozen. No one can save her." I nodded to him and walked away. Chloe and Mark, the two who had colluded to destroy me, were now turning on each other in prison. Their unholy alliance had crumbled. I stepped out of the detention center into the bright sunlight. Alexander was leaning against the car, waiting for me, holding a cup of bubble tea, my favorite drink, which I had mentioned offhandedly once during dinner. "All done?" he asked, handing it to me. "All done." It's a huge weight off my shoulders. "Then let's go home. There's an important shareholder meeting this afternoon. The CFO can't be absent." I took the cool drink and took a sip. The sweetness spread through me, washing away the bitter taste of the past. "Yes, let's go home, darling." It was the first time I had called him that without feeling like it was an act. Perhaps after the storm, the sun really does shine brighter. The trial for the Croft Maritime Economic case took place 6 months later. It was a media circus, given the scale of the crime and the high-profile defendants. I sat in the front row, next to Alexander. In the defendant's box, Chloe and Mark stood far apart, never looking at each other. Chloe looked ancient, her hair half gray, her face gaunt. She denied everything, blaming circumstances, her subordinates, even Alexander for pressuring her. But against the mountain of evidence, her excuses were meaningless. Mark, in contrast, was contrite. He confessed to everything, bowed his head in shame, and apologized to his family and to society. He admitted that greed had blinded him. After 3 intense days, the judge delivered the verdict. Chloe Vance was sentenced to life in prison for embezzlement and money laundering, ordered to repay the $12 million, and had all personal assets seized. Mark Peterson was sentenced to 8 years for tax evasion and conspiracy. His sentence reduced due to his cooperation and repayment of the funds. When the verdict was read, Chloe collapsed, wailing. Mark simply stood, head bowed, accepting his fate. He looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with regret and a strange gratitude. I gave a slight nod, a final farewell to our past. The trial ended. As we pushed through the crowd of reporters, Alexander took my hand. "It's really over," he said. "Yes. What goes around comes around. Karma misses no one." We stepped out of the courthouse. The bright sun made me squint. The revenge was complete. The traitors had paid their price. But strangely, I didn't feel the triumphant joy I had imagined, only a vast, hollow emptiness. I looked at Alexander. He stood beside me, solid as a mountain. He had helped me through all of this. But now that our common enemy was gone, what reason did we have to stay together? "I want to go home and rest," I said quietly. "Of course. I'll take you." In the car, we were silent. I stared out the window, my mind racing. It was time to execute the final clause of our contract. A week after the trial, things at Croft Maritime had settled into a new normal. I spent the morning organizing financial files and handing over new internal control procedures to my team. Everything was orderly, clear my signature style. At noon, I opened my desk drawer and took out a white envelope I had prepared the night before. Inside was a petition for an uncontested divorce, already signed by me. I took a deep breath. This was our agreement from the start. This marriage was a business transaction with a single goal: to take down Chloe. With that goal accomplished, I had no right to hold on to Alexander. He was an exceptional man who deserved a wife who came to him for love, not as part of a revenge pact. I walked over to his office. He was on a video call with international partners. He saw me and gestured for me to wait. I sat on the familiar sofa, quietly watching him work. His focus, his decisiveness, his sharp gaze, it had all become so familiar. I realized how much I would miss him. 15 minutes later, he ended the call and walked over, smiling. "What's up? Is our CFO here to report another embezzler?" I didn't smile back. I placed the white envelope on the coffee table. "No, I'm here to terminate our contract." The smile vanished from his face. He looked at the envelope, then at me, his eyes darkening. "What is this?" "Divorce papers," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We had an agreement. When the job was done, I would give you back your freedom. Chloe is in prison. The company is stable. My mission is complete." Alexander picked up the envelope but didn't open it. He turned it over in his hands, his expression unreadable. "You really want to leave?" "Yes. I don't want to take advantage of your kindness any longer. I have enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I want to find myself again." "Find yourself?" he scoffed. "Or are you running away?" "I'm not running. I'm honoring our agreement. You're a businessman. You understand the importance of a contract." I stood up, unable to look him in the eye any longer. "I've already moved my things out of the mansion. Thank you for everything. Goodbye, Alexander." I turned and walked away, each step feeling like it was weighted with lead. I waited for him to say something, to ask me to stay, but all I heard was a chilling silence. I closed the door behind me, and the tears began to fall. Was this really the end? I returned to my old apartment, which I had repurchased. The space felt empty and cold. I sat numbly on the sofa, staring at my phone, hoping for a call or a text. Nothing came. Alexander didn't call. One day, then 2, then 3 passed. I tried to resume a normal life: yoga, shopping, seeing friends, but my mind was always elsewhere, haunted by his image. On the 4th afternoon, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and my heart leaped into my throat. It was Alexander. I opened the door. He stood there in his usual impeccable suit, though he looked tired. He walked straight past me into the apartment. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to sound strong. Did you sign the papers? He didn't answer. He pulled the divorce petition from his jacket pocket. In front of me, he tore it in half, then into quarters, and crumpled the pieces in his fist. What are you doing? I gasped. Canceling a contract, he said flatly. As chairman, I do not approve this resignation. Don't be ridiculous. This is a marriage, not a job. He stepped forward, backing me against the wall, so close I could feel his breath. To me, they're one and the same. Now you listen to me, Emily. I have assets worth hundreds of millions. My books are a labyrinth. I have thousands of employees. I can't manage it alone. You are the only person who knows every corner of this company, the only person I trust completely. Are you really going to walk out and leave me to deal with that mess by myself? You can hire another CFO, I countered weakly. I can hire a CFO. I can't hire a wife, he said, his eyes burning into mine. I don't need a doll to display in my home. I need a partner, someone with the guts to stand beside me, the intelligence to advise me, and the ruthlessness to protect this family with me. That person is you, but we started with a contract. So what? He cut me off. In business, the most successful contracts are the ones both parties want to renew for life. I want to renew this marriage contract with you. The term is indefinite. Profits are split 50-50. All risk is assumed by me. Do you accept the terms? It was the most pragmatic, unromantic, shark-like proposal I had ever heard, and it made my heart pound more than any sweet words ever could. He didn't say he loved me, but he affirmed my irreplaceable position in his life and his empire. I looked down at the shredded paper on the floor, then back up at him. You're a clever one. Hiring a CFO and a wife with no recruitment fees. A rare, brilliant smile spread across his face. I'm an investor. I never let the best deal of my life get away. He leaned down and kissed my forehead, a soft but possessive kiss. Come home. The house is cold and empty without you. I can't sleep. I moved back into the mansion by the sea. This time, I wasn't a guest or an actress. I was its mistress, and I was Alexander's partner. Our life wasn't like a romantic movie. We were workaholics, busy with projects and business trips. Our dinners were often heated debates about business strategy or market fluctuations. But beneath that pragmatism was an unbreakable bond. One weekend evening, we sat on the balcony, overlooking the ocean. A cool breeze blew in from the water. I leaned my head on his shoulder, feeling a profound sense of peace. You know, I said softly, I used to think happiness was about sacrificing everything for a husband, about being the woman behind the man. But now I know true happiness is being yourself, being respected, and conquering new heights alongside the person you love. Alexander squeezed my shoulder. You taught me that women are anything but the weaker sex. You are the most brilliant warrior I have ever met. Thank you for showing up at that cafe. Thank you for agreeing to my insane contract. And thank you, I laughed, for not signing my divorce papers. Never, he said, kissing my hair. I'm a shark. Once I bite, I never let go. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. The quarterly report. Profits are up 30%. All thanks to my wife. So, what's my bonus? I asked playfully. You get me. For the rest of my life. Is that enough? I laughed, my heart full. The painful past had faded away. Mark and Chloe were paying for their mistakes in prison. And I was holding my own happiness in my hands, a real, tangible happiness built on reason, strength, and a mature love. The billion-dollar marriage contract had become a lifetime commitment, the most successful merger both Alexander and I could have ever hoped for. And so, we closed this turbulent journey, from a betrayed wife to the matriarch of Croft Maritime. Emily's story is a powerful testament to a woman's intrinsic worth. Through the downfall of Mark and Chloe, we see that while deceit and greed may offer temporary gains, it is intellect and fortitude that provide a lifetime guarantee of happiness. Emily's ultimate fulfillment is the clearest proof of this lesson. A woman finds her true love and peace only when she stops sacrificing blindly, learns to value herself, and is strong enough to stand as an equal to the man in her life, in love and in business. Thank you for listening.